after the game. He said, I don't think today's defeat was fair. I think a lot went against us today. I think we had an expected goals value of 3.4 and we had 4, 5, 6 top chances. Right now, winning the Bundesliga is not so realistic. But last season, we also hoped until the last second, and it worked out. All right, well, we're going to welcome in Archie Rhind-Tutt, who's been following this whole drama all the way from us, most of the time from the sidelines. But let me start with you guys here in the studio, and let me start with you as well, Ali. This was the last thing that Bayern needed today. Absolutely, the last thing they needed. And if you could picture a bad week for Bayern Munich, this is even worse. An awful week from Bayern Munich. Even in their worst nightmares, they could not have pictured such a bad week that started with the destruction by Bayer Leverkusen last weekend, losing to Lazio, and then following that up and losing at Bochum. Awful week, right? And so you're thinking, at the beginning of the game for the first 20 minutes, you're seeing a marginally better version of Bayern Munich. They seem to be in control of the game. They go up in the game. They get that second chance there for Harry Kane, in which you're thinking, okay, this is going to be 2-0. It didn't happen. In years past, when I'm watching this game from 1,000 miles away, I would have said, it's all right. It's all right. It'll be one of the many chances they're going to get, and they're going to run away with this game regardless. When that miss happened, nowadays, given what the reality of Bayern Munich is, I was thinking, uh-oh. And if I'm thinking it, 1,000 miles away, and I'm sensing it, and I'm feeling it, you don't think the players are feeling it? You don't think they're sensing it? That they know that the margin for them right now between being in control and a total collapse is so small. It's such a fine line. It's a blurry line, actually, when you think of it. And so they know that they need all the help they can get at this point to elevate their level of confidence, and going up to nothing would have done that. They went from there to a stoppage because of the protest, and it's like somebody just said, Bayern Munich, that's it, and that's all, thanks for coming, and they didn't show up for the remaining of the first half. And then Bochum just fought. Bochum is not a team that is just going to outplay you. They can outfight you, they can outrun you, they can outwork you. That's what they try to do, and that's what they did. And they showed a desire and a sense of purpose that Bayern Munich simply doesn't have at this point. We only saw a version of Bayern Munich that looked similar to what we expect from them when they went down a man and they were desperate and they said, well, we have to go for it. We have no other choice. Bayern Munich right now, as I mentioned before, they are so far away from their level. But again, their difference between them being in control of what we perceive to be in control of a game and the whole roof collapsing and everything going wrong for them, it's so small. And so now they're expecting for things to go wrong. And when things go wrong, the team just breaks down. They're so fragile. This is like a boxer with a glass jaw right now. They cannot take a punch. Yeah, talking about the mentality issues with Bayern right now, is it that Bochum looks at a team like Bayern, the run that they're in, and thinks, okay, they can be got at today, and they did it? Well, it took them a little bit of time to figure that one out, because when they're stepping on the field, they're thinking we're playing Bayern Munich today. But as the game goes on, they start realising that this is not the Bayern Munich that we're used to playing against. And players can smell it on the field. And they just got after them. And Bayern, as Ali said, when they get punched on the nose, they don't come back. With the amount of experience, I mean, you look at that lineup, you talk about experienced players, but when the going gets tough, nobody stands up strong. They all seem to disappear. And they're all looking around to see who's going to take the lead. And nobody's taking it. And I think it's even worse. I think what's even worse is they look at the sideline and they look at a guy in Tuchel who they now, at this stage of the season, they know he has no idea what his best team is. They know. When you sit down before a game or the day before and the manager reads the team out, we all have an idea of a proper team. We know who at least 10 are. There may be a change for maybe a particular reason. When you're in this Bayern dressing room and you sit down for the team, you've got no idea who's playing. Because the changes he makes constantly, different formations, different way of playing. I mean, an absolute shambles. And Tuchel, I can't imagine how Tuchel still got a job. Well, the CEO says that Tuchel's sticking around, Archie, because obviously that's been the first question for so many after a third consecutive defeat.
Yes, that's what Jan Christian Dresen said. He was very reluctant to try and answer that question, but in the end said that he will be in charge for the RB Leipzig game next weekend. But the air is getting thinner and thinner for Thomas Tuchel because the manner of that defeat today was shocking. And the fact is, I don't think Bochum had to play at their very limit. And usually it goes without saying in Germany that you have to play a perfect game if you're going to beat Bayern Munich. And I don't think Bochum really had to today. They were very good, but they weren't at their limit. And if you go through that Bayern team and you think about the amount of players who are just off form right now, Leroy Sané, who didn't start today because of a flare-up of a knee injury that he's been carrying for weeks, so said Thomas Tuchel. The fact that when he came on, everything seemed to go wrong for him. He missed a glorious chance as well. It was a fantastic save by Manuel Riemann. But the sort of chance where in the first half of the season you think he's sticking this away. But it's the same old Leroy Sané inconsistency that we've seen throughout his career. You look at the Joshua Kimmich situation, where he comes to near blows, a near scuffle with the assistant coach Salt Löw after the game because he was taken off in the second half. That's a situation that's having to be managed. Harry Kane had Harry Kane had his worst game in a Bayern shirt.
And if anything, it's getting worse. And somebody like Harry Kane, people forget, Harry Kane has little foibles like everybody else. And when the team's poor, it affects him as well. So that's another reason why he maybe misses the chances. Because his head's not quite where it was the first time he stepped on the field for Bayern, when all he's thinking about is goals, goals, goals. He's looking around, looking at all these players that seem to be disillusioned and don't understand what their job is and what they're supposed to be doing and, where am I supposed to be? And, oh, I'm not playing today, why is that? And what formation are we going to play this week? I mean, there are so many things going wrong, and every single one of them, in my opinion, it all points straight back to the source, and that is the manager. The manager, absolutely, 100%, has to take the blame for the complete disillusion of this team.
So what happens now, Archie, if they don't see this tie-out with Lazio in the Champions League? They're obviously trailing after the first leg. Does Tuchel stay in his place then as Bayern coach?
I think you have to ask the question, will we get that far? Will we get to that point? Because next weekend, they're at home to RB Leipzig this season. Can you really recognise an identity in comparison to what we've seen with Bayer Leverkusen, where I think we know the exact game plan that's going to happen now, week for week, and they're so confident in it. Whereas with Bayern, you just never know what to expect.
Hold that thought 1 minute, Ale, because just why I've got you talking about the whole Tuchel situation, Archie, who would fill the hole that he would leave? Who's actually available to come and take over Bayern right now if he goes?
Hansi Flick, but he's not said to be a popular choice with very influential board member Uli Hoeneß. That is for me the most obvious candidate, also because the guy that he chiefly didn't get on with, and a big reason why he left the club, Hasan Salihamidzic, the then sporting director, is no longer at the club. But otherwise, candidates are not jumping out at you for who would come in right now. Surely they're not going to go back in again for Jupp Heynckes, who has said firmly, I have retired. But at this stage, Bayern seem desperate. And let's not forget, the decision to sack Nagelsmann last time, that is indicative of a club that thinks it needs to make a desperate move that nobody really saw coming. And once you start to make one desperate move, then I think it leads to more. And that's what we've seen over the course of the last year.
Let's finish this conversation by adding to what Archie said there.
Well, first of all, Hansi Flick apparently is the most popular man in the world, because if you ask Barcelona, they're also saying Hansi Flick is the answer to Xavi. I'm just saying, he seems to be a hot commodity right now. In regards to what Archie was mentioning and this team lacking identity, it's one thing if Archie and myself and those of us that cover Bundesliga on a weekly basis can't quite figure out what is it that Bayern Munich are trying to do in the field. What I think is even more concerning is the fact that they don't know what they're trying to do on the field. They don't know. And if you needed evidence as to why I say that they don't know what they're trying to do, well, go back to the game against Bayer Leverkusen, in which the most important game of the season-defining game for Bayern Munich and Bayer Leverkusen, the manager for Bayern Munich, Thomas Tuchel, decides to go with a formation that he had not played yet with that group of players. He was experimenting in the most important game of the season. If you had known who you are and what your identity is coming into that match, you play that team and you play those guys and you put them out there because that's your best against their best. When you're searching, when you're experimenting, that's because you have questions, and they still have questions and zero answers.
It looks like we've got an interesting week ahead.